From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast, and I am super excited on this extremely cold and extremely snowy day in upstate New York. Today's Monday. School is closed. School was closed on Friday, and I'm freezing. I'm really, really cold, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, just a big ball of sunlight, because my guest today has. What are we on here? Was this your third time on the show, or?
I believe third time, yes.
Yeah, third time on the show. The one, the only, the marketing wizard of Lincoln. Marketing wizard of Lincoln.
I like that.
Ryan Gross from CMO Share. Ryan, how you doing, brother?
Good. Just like you, I'm getting through frigid coldness, and I just wonder, why do we live here? And you know, there's times where I'm like, this is why we live here. And there's times like this, and I'm like, what were my great grandparents thinking?
So, you know, this was kind of an impromptu interview, podcast recording, because it just seems very, very relevant, at least with my one-on-one coaching clients and guys that I help in our group coaching platform. It just seems like it used to be maybe every fifth or sixth question was about marketing. Now, more recently, it seems like it's every other question that's about marketing. So, you know, I hit up the person that has really helped me professionally in my own dental organization, and has always been willing to share his expertise and his wisdom with everybody. So what Ryan and I decided to do is he's going to just start off with some high-level insights based on what he's seeing in the market and what he's hearing from his clients. And then maybe we'll get into a little deep dive on specifics and KPIs and all things like that. So I'm sure it will be a very informative, very relevant, and very action item based call, like it always is with Ryan. So you cool with that, buddy?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, it's awesome. So just take us off, right? Where are we at? What are you seeing? What's going on?
Well, the conversation is very similar to what you were saying. I mean, obviously we are in the marketing space, so we are getting, we get a lot of questions. We get a lot of questions operational side of things as well. And this is something that's been a hot topic of how do I evaluate what's working and what's not working. And I think to start with, you really have to kind of look at what's happening from a market standpoint and really start to evaluate, you know, what's going on from a bigger picture to determine what to do. And why I say that is because we're finding, and a lot of what we do is based upon data. We house a lot of information on dental practices between marketing and operations and phone data. And we know, and these are the key insights that we know that I think are causing a lot of these questions to come up, is that when you look at the data coming through, more and more people are searching for a dentist because of financial situation. So it means they're looking at, do you take my insurance? Do you have payment plans? You know, what's the cost? Can I afford it? Things like that. That causes a difference in the type of patient who's calling you, and so in how you interact with them. And then we also know that there is less, or more people want, I should say, more people are wanting immediate availability. And so you have to kind of look at that from a big picture, saying people are wondering, how much does something cost? Can I afford it, and can I get in right away to be seen? And that's important, because when you translate that into your practice, 6 months ago, you could have had, say, 100 people call you to schedule an appointment as a new patient. And you could you were on average scheduling 75% of those, 75 out of 100. And this is data we have because we evaluate a lot of call data through our partner Mango and some other phone companies as well, just to analyze what is that phone percentage conversion. Now we're seeing that conversion drop to like 60%, 60 out of 100, And when you start to actually listen to what's happening, it's really based upon, do you take my insurance? How much is it going to cost? And like I said, can I get in right away? So you start there, and then that helps you understand what's going on from a big picture. And then you can kind of unpeel the onion and start to look at, okay, my specific situation, is that occurring with my situation or in my practice? Because what you don't want to do with first thing is you don't want to make these knee jerk or sudden changes to your marketing if it's not a marketing issue. Because then what you could technically do is make things worse for you. And then you also don't want to spend more money. Like that's, my background before getting in the dental space, I was in the attractions industry. I worked for the Walt Disney Company, massive budget, but then I worked for nonprofits from zoos and museums, and we didn't have a big budget. And so I'm very protective of marketing budgets. And so the last thing you do is want to spend money that isn't going to actually translate into fixing your problem. And so I think kind of going through and looking at some higher level KPIs to get an understanding of where do I go with this? Do I need to look at my marketing further? Do I need to look at my operations, or is it a combination?
Awesome. Yeah. So let me just ask a couple poignant questions there. With the current financial situation across the country being, let's call it bearish. So more and more people are, to use your words, more and more people are searching for financial based questions. Do you take my insurance, payment plans, and then immediate availability? So are you asking your clients, or are you seeing clients be strategic about going after those patients? Like, are they setting up SEO or social media campaigns that are around insurance driven patients, payment plan patients, immediate care patients? And if so, is that like your recommendation, or like how are you advising your clients in that regard?
Yeah. So what we always try to do is look at the best the highest value patient to go after. That's majority of what we do with the practices we work with. And what that means is the patient's going to be a solid patient, because we're looking at, our belief is to build your active patient base. That's one of the most important things you can do from a dental practice, is build that active patient base, build revenue and production. But what we're looking at is these higher value patients. And so when you start to target or I shouldn't say higher value, just best value patient, you don't want like the 15 to 20% of the patients who just are trying to get away with the $79 new patient special and get the cheapest dentist possible. So we've already taken them out of the equation, and then Medicaid patients as well, unless you're a Medicaid practice. So then what you're left is this chunk of patients that I say is like the 30 to 40% of the patient base. And that is exactly what you're saying then. So what we're looking at is targeting those things. We're targeting membership plans, savings plans, also insurance heavily, payment options, like, there's a lot of financing options out there. So we are targeting those patients to get in front of. The thing is, you have to be able then to deliver that message once they call in and once they're in the office, especially when they call in, because that's the key right there. If you're targeting them and you can't answer them over the phone, that's an issue.
So, being that you and I have a long history of you basically being the fractional CMO of our organization, we heed your advice. And if you read the country and you read the financial situation, you'll say to us, Jason, this is who we should be going after. And we're like, yeah, Ryan, like let's do it. Mm-hmm. If someone listening doesn't use you as their marketing company, but agrees that, what, with the current financial temperature, I do want to actively target people that are seeking immediate care, that are financially driven, want to maximize their insurance, what do they specifically ask for? They want to draft an email to the marketing company that they're working for. Like what do they ask for? And then what do they do if they get a little bit of pushback?
Yeah. So I think let's start, I guess let's kind of broaden the conversation to evaluating what is it you need to look at for your marketing company first to see what's working. And so, what are the KPIs that they're measuring? And so for us, we're pretty transparent with the KPIs we measure. We measure, first of all, your marketing numbers, which is pretty straightforward and simple. We go very in depth with our Google Analytics, but it's really coming down to how many conversions or key events that people that are happening on your website. And what that means is how many people are trying to call you through the website or schedule online. That's the first thing. So does your marketing company tell you those numbers? There's a lot of other numbers out there like traffic, engagement, right? All of those things. But really what it comes down to is how many people are actually attempting to schedule an appointment with you. So if you have that data, that's your first data point. Your second data point, which some companies do and some don't, like we provide, if it's available to us, we provide the phone data back to the practice in our reports. So like in your case, we're going to look at, again, those conversions, and we're going to look at your Mango voice that you guys use to be able to look at how many inbound phone calls you have, how many are answered. And that's a key right there. Then we're going to take that and evaluate it to your new patient numbers. So you have three different data points that are all somewhat independent to each other, but then they also influence each other. And so when you're asking your marketing company, the first thing you would want to ask is, what are you seeing from the conversions that are occurring on my website? And then what you can ask them is, can you tell me the type of traffic that's coming to my site? And what that means is, or like, who's coming to the site? So before AI, it was just these keywords like dentist near me or, new patient special, things like that. But now with AI, it's much more, the way that searches are is much more detailed and individual. So you can get an idea still who's coming to your site. So if you ask them, can you tell me the type of person that's looking to go to the dentist, or coming to my site, and they should be able to tell you, yes, you have a higher amount of people looking just for a cleaning that are focused on, their insurance-based patients, and maybe they're looking for availability very soon. So they should be able to give you some type of demographic, and then that should answer that question of, okay, first, are they coming to my site? The people that, in this case are, maybe looking more for a financial based dentistry. And then you can take it, and this is more anecdotal, but you can look at the patients that are coming into your practice now, and you can see, man, I'm getting a lot of people who are not accepting all the treatment. Well, we know right there's something going on. Does that match what you're seeing online?
Awesome. So when you say that you track the phones via Mango or some of these other phone companies, you can't actually track new patient leads as much as you can track how many times the phone rings. And I'm not telling you that, I'm asking you that.
Correct. That's true. Yes. So what we do is we don't necessarily go from, because it's very difficult, first of all, to do that. So where you have a patient who finds you online, calls you through an ad, who then you contract the whole system. It's extremely difficult actually to do that with enough accuracy for us to use it as like a lead KPI for us. So we don't do that. So what we're looking at is more of a percentage base. So we house millions of data points. We have over 10 million phone call data, or phone calls that we have reviewed and categorized. Then we have, millions of conversions. And so we know percentages. So like, for example, we know that typically, and I call it the 10% rule, that 10% of your inbound calls are going to be new patients. And if you look at a practice, it's like, don't quote me for exactly this, but it's over 95% of the practices that we see fall between 6% and like 14% of their or of their inbound phone calls are new patients. And we can validate that by, there's a lot of ways to do that. But anyway, so you're going to fall, and we know it's around 10%. So that's your first thing. If you just look at your inbound phone call and you have, say, 500 inbound phone calls, you could have 50 new patients based upon that. But then you have to look at how many of those you actually answered.
Right. So then the next metric. So let me take a step back. Um, if I'm looking for a marketing company, or if I'm auditing my marketing company, I want one of the primary things I'm asking them to do is to generate more phone calls and or more reach outs, either via
Mm-hmm.
the text message software or through phone calls, right? So if they were like, yeah, we can do that. So then the assumption is we'll increase the number of total phone calls, and the assumption is that of 100 of these calls, roughly 10% are going to be prospective new patients. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay. And then so the next metric that we really need to look at, to your point, is call answer rate. So of the 100 that call, if I'm only answering 60%, that takes my prospective new patient number from 10 to 6, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I want total calls that are total income calls. I want call answer rate. And then from the operations perspective, I want new patient lead conversion. So let's step into the operations ring and just give me your experience on when people that are answering the phone are not converting leads to scheduled appointments. What are the two or three pain points that you're typically recognizing when you listen to recorded phone calls?
Yeah, it's availability, and it's not being able to answer a question regarding their insurance or some type of payment question, or cost, I should say. So insurance or cost. Hands down, those are the two things that will make up about 90% of the reason why people don't convert, is because of that. So, and how you can, I guess, too, when we're talking about like, how do you actually, interpret this data a little bit, like a step further, is so when you ask and I'm going to lead here to why it's important to actually looking at the conversion metric. So if if your marketing company says you had 50 phone call leads, right off the bat, then on average, again, you can take a look at your call answer rate. So let's just say you answer, 100% of those. Let's use 100% to make it an even number. So then we would know that out of those 50 phone call leads, typically about 85% of those are going to be new patients. So, you're looking at 50, it's around, let's just say 42 or something like that. And you answered all of them. So there should be 42 new patients right there. But you can also go back and track that with the number of inbound calls. So you have a number over here, say it's 42 based upon just the marketing number. But then over here on the inbound phone, let's just say there's, 500, and we go back to that 10% rule. Now we're at 50. So now we're there. But now let's go to the conversion standpoint, which was your original question. So, between those two numbers that you could be around 40 to 50 new patients. Now, if you had 30, and you can scale this for whatever your call answer rate is. But again, we're saying 100% call answer rate. You had 30. Well, then there's an issue there. And so you need to go through and identify and like unpeel the onion on the phone call conversions. So there you would say, okay, maybe we're not converting enough. So then you can spot, and we do this a lot for the practice we work with. We will spot check their calls, and we'll listen to a bunch of new patient calls. And so you can spot check those calls and start to figure out, why am I not converting? So that goes back to
Okay.
that conversion percent. And then typically we're going to find it's going to go down to availability and some type of cost or insurance.
Okay, great. So if we had to put a KPI around, let's talk about both of those scenarios. If we had to put a KPI around availability, in my operations head, it would be a scorecard that says how many days till the next new patient appointment, either in hygiene, and then you could also have a KPI, how many days till the next limited emergency exam.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be a good goal in order to convert the new patient that just wants to develop a new relationship with a dentist and have their teeth cleaned and have an exam? What would be the ideal? Obviously, the ideal is zero. Yeah, we can get you in today. But what would be
Mm-hmm.
let's call it the max limit that you would encourage one of your offices to have?
So it's going to kind of vary on your location and your situation, but in typical, what we would like to see is within 2 weeks is the max.
Okay.
Um, and the reason why that is if you look at it, we can tell based upon if you do enough data points on this, you can actually figure this out. So you can listen to enough calls where you'll figure out that if you get beyond like the ideal is 1 to 3 days. That's where
Right.
people want to schedule. And then you have 4 to 7 days, and then 2 weeks, and then after that, every the further you get out, the lower your percentage of that conversion is happening over the phone. So if you're within the 2 week period, that's going to get you to the point after 2 weeks, it goes significantly down unless your
Okay.
team is spectacularly good at converting over the phone. So my short
Okay.
answer is 2 weeks, but one to
All right.
three
Cool.
is great.
All right. So ideally 1 to 3, worst case scenario, 2 clinical weeks for that new patient hygiene type of an appointment.
Mhm.
And then I would assume for limited, I have a toothache, it would be 1 to 2 days.
Yes,
Okay.
you can get to 3 days, but outside of that, you've just sunk your conversions.
Okay. Side question here, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because we've done it before on a podcast and my listeners can go back to those. But you've always been, I shouldn't say always, more recently, you have been a huge advocate of making sure that your online scheduling appears to have availability within the parameters that probably you just spoke to. Otherwise, and please correct me if I'm paraphrasing you poorly. Otherwise, the patient won't even pick up the phone to make the appointment. Are you still of that mindset?
Yes, it's even, yeah, I would say it's even maybe even more significant than it was in the past. So, I mean, just the 30-second overview of that is if you show availability out 2 weeks, the likelihood of, so if you look at the number of calls you get, because people will look at online scheduling and they call you. That happens all the time. I mean, people do it in every industry, look at reservations on hotels or on restaurants or whatever, and they'll call often. So we know for a fact that if you have availability within 10 days online, that you will get twice as many calls, that people who click schedule online will twice as likely to call than if it's 10 days out. And so then it goes down, it's half as much.
Okay. So, well, I guess one more question regarding
Yeah.
that. If you truly don't have availability, like everyone has a shortage in hygiene, let's say,
Mhm.
would you encourage your clients to create fictitious openings with online scheduling to get the phone, to get that prospective patient to call, like a ghost column on online scheduling?
Only if you are operationally able to do that. That's the key, because if you don't do that, or if you're not operationally capable of doing that, you can cause some chaos for your practice when they get in or when they schedule. So that's one option. The other option is, this is a very simple one. Most online scheduling platforms have a screen that can pop up that says, to schedule your hygiene or your cleaning with us, please call us at this number.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
then, are not even seeing availability. You don't get as many calls as if there was immediate availability showing up online, but you're going to get more calls that's seen if it looks like you're booking 4 weeks out.
Fair. Okay. So, the first pain point was how quickly can I get in? And then you said the second pain point focused around, uh, let's call it incompetencies with whoever's on the phone answering financial or insurance based questions.
Mhm.
So, what are the top two, three? When you're listening to recorded calls, you're probably cringing, be like, no, you shouldn't have said that, right? So, what are you hearing, and what could we best do to our teams to train them up to better handle those particular issues?
Yeah, so it's as simple as this. Like, often what happens is, like, so a patient will call in and say, okay, I'm looking for I'm a new patient looking to get a clean done. They're like, okay, they're like, do you take my insurance? And this is what the person says, yes. And they're like, okay. And they're like, well, do you know, they're going to follow up with some questions. Well, do you know, like, what's the copay? How's it going to work? Like the cleaning? And they're like, it just depends on your insurance. That right away could be a conversation stopper for people, because they might ask, well, like, I don't know, what's it going to cost you? I don't know. I don't
Right.
understand insurance. And they're like, well, we don't really know. Like, it just depends. That is a problem. So the best way, and this is not my expertise, but from the people that we've worked with and some, consultants in this area, it's really to say, we will take care of your insurance for you. Come on in. We're going to break it down. We're going to file this, and we're going to give you what your responsibility is. Just come on in. We'll take care of that once you get in. And again, I'm not on the operational side of it like that, but if you just literally just ask or stop or you answer the question just that simply, it's not enough information for the patient.
Yeah, fair. So what we've been doing, and I'm going to be vulnerable here, and hopefully you don't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing that. What a horrible idea. Um, sometimes you can't. A new patient calls and you can't answer all of those questions
Mhm.
right away because either the insurance company's closed or it takes a while to get that information. So we've been scheduling those patients a couple days out if we have availability in a couple days and promising them that we're going to do basically like a complimentary insurance breakdown and we will follow up with a phone call before they actually come into the office. And it just gives them a lot of peace of mind of like, okay, I got my appointment scheduled, but I'm not coming in unless they call me back and completely break down the insurance questions that I have. And I think we've had some really good traction with that. It helps build trust with the patient that they're going to get a call back and they're going to get a full breakdown.
Mhm.
Is that something that you would advise against, or do you feel like that could be a good strategy?
It's a great strategy. It's something that I've seen outside the dental space as well and other medical areas as well. We look a lot outside of dental just to kind of get an idea of what's happening across the medical space, and that's something that's more and more because you're going to schedule them more than likely because you're promising them that you're going to follow up with them. Now, if you follow up with them for whatever reason they decide to cancel, at least you had an opportunity that you didn't before. So I love that idea. And I've heard of
Okay.
a few other practices doing that. I think it's a solid way. And I'm going to give you something I don't know if you looked at from a positive outcome of that is you get them on the schedule and now you're touching base with them a few days later again, which is another touch point, which is going to be more than or it's going to have a higher likelihood of them not canceling. So this is a whole different rabbit hole. We won't go down this one, but like the more touch points you have with the patient after they schedule new patient, after they schedule that appointment, or even current patients, the more likely they are to hold that appointment. So
Yeah.
what you're doing there is just giving yourself another advantage for that new patient to come in.
Awesome. Yeah. And we've seen that too, especially with online scheduling. We have found that if someone schedules online and we don't have at least one touch point with the patient before that appointment, the chances of them keeping that appointment goes down significantly to the point where
Mhm.
we've really gone to online deposits just to kind of make that problem go away. And it's been a great solution. All right, so let me just kind of summarize here, and then we can touch on anything else that's relevant or that you think listeners should know. So, from a marketing perspective, we're trying to generate more calls. We can't really ask our marketing team to specifically generate leads, although that's what they're doing. But we can't really differentiate leads. We can really only just increase the number of new patient calls. You would agree with that?
Correct.
Okay. And
Yes.
then from that number, operationally, we have to do two things. We have to answer the phone and we have to convert the lead to a scheduled appointment. And as a rule of thumb of uh, every 100 incoming calls, it's a good estimate to suggest that roughly 10% of those are going to be new patient leads. And then what would you say is a good goal in terms of conversion of those 10 leads?
Um, I would say you're trying to hit around 75, 80%, 85%, 75 to 85% is where I would like to see. That's going to be, I think, your optimal. If you go below 75%, it's typically on a market issue. It's an operational issue. 75 to
Okay.
85%.
And I get this question all the time on coaching calls. If we're saying that we want the new patient lead conversion to be 75 to 80%, does that include prospective new patients that are insured with state assurance?
No. So we take that out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, you want to take the Medicaid out and put that as a separate. So
Okay.
otherwise, it's not really an accurate number.
Perfect. Um, and then, in your opinion, or based on the data that you've collected, the two primary obstacles of getting that lead to convert are availability, and a worst case scenario, no more than 2 weeks, best case scenario, 1 to 3 days, and just lack of training or incompetencies with handling financial and insurance based questions.
Correct. 100%.
Awesome. Awesome. I got a couple just kind of other off the cuff random questions if you have a few minutes. I just
Yeah.
would love to get your perspective on it. I hate phone trees. I just feel that they're super impersonable, and they don't scream customer centric
hmm
relations. That being said, we have a phone tree. So, do you have any data, perspective, thoughts on phone trees in this day and age? And I just would love to get your insights.
Yeah, so in decibel space, and this was some numbers done last year. Again, through this is with Mango. We worked with them on this. Is that about 42% of the people will will select the wrong phone tree when they call in, and so that's a high percent. And so right
Yeah.
off the bat, you're looking at an issue right there. And so, when you start to dive into phone tree numbers, you can actually determine how many people get connected to a person if your phone tree set up right and your phone company, your VoIP is set up properly. And the amount of hangups that happen into a phone tree are very, very high. And so it just, ranges we've seen like up to 40% to sometimes 50% of the calls is hang up in the phone tree. So your phone tree has to be set up properly if you are going to use it. And it's a nature of the size of the practice you are, in my opinion. So like you're a very large organization. And so not saying that that means you have to have a phone tree, but that's going to aid because of the fact of just how many people are calling into you. I mean, you're getting tens of thousands of calls a month, the largest of anyone we work with for the most part. You're one or two. And so you're going to have to be able to decipher those calls quickly and make it easy for the patient. If you're a smaller practice and you have a phone tree, I don't fully understand that. Because you should be able to be more personal with that. And so I typically am against phone trees, and there isn't a movement with it too. If you look at a lot of like credit card companies, for example, I'll use them. That there's a lot of credit card companies selling now. Hey, call and get a human,
Right.
and that's a selling point. So I'm typically against them unless it's set up very very good, like strategically. Yours is pretty good. Like, I mean, we look at your actual drop off rate that goes into your phone tree, and it's very low. I think don't quote me, but it's under 20%, which
Okay.
is fairly good.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you saying that. So I still hate phone trees, but maybe I'll tolerate it for another few months. Um, the other question I get from a lot of our coaching clients is availability of team members to answer the phone. So, two kind of sub questions that I constantly get are: Jason, would you recommend us answering the phone and saying, Finger Lakes Family Dental or Finger Lakes Dental Care, can you hold, please? And putting them on hold. Or would you recommend that they just don't answer the phone if there's like a patient in front of them? Because what I'm hearing is happening is the patient gets put on hold and all of a sudden it's a minute or 2 minutes on hold and they just hang up. So,
Mhm.
that's the first part of my question. And the second part of my question is if call answer rate is as important as you allude to, and I know you're right, should we be scheduling anyone, either a third party company or a W-2 employee on our team that's strategically monitoring the phones after hours into, say, after, 7, 8 o'clock at night? So do you have any recommendations or thoughts on those 2 points?
Yeah, the first one is that's a very good question. And you could use some data to kind of answer this. if you're able to determine that you are, say, 50% of the people are hanging up when you put them on hold, let it ring and go to voicemail, at least that, because there's nothing more frustrating as a consumer to be put on hold and then just hang up. Then you've lost trust. Especially, the thing that's forgotten in all of this conversation is current patients. We talk, it's always the new patient conversation, but we talk a lot about current patients. Everything that's happening in your phone system for a new patient is happening to a current patient. And that's the likelihood of them having an emergency and going somewhere else because you didn't pick up the phone. It's just as much as a new patient not scheduling often. And so I would answer that question by saying, let it go to voicemail, or not answer it versus just hanging up, because that just makes people mad. So
Fair.
that's my first answer. The second thing is we've had more practices that are of larger scale, companies of larger scale, have someone who all they do is oversee, I shouldn't say all, that's a piece of what they do is oversee. It's interesting too. They oversee scheduling, availability. So they don't make the availability, but they monitor the availability of their locations. And then they also look at the phone data and they look at the conversions. And that's their main job is to say, okay, do we have availability? Is there an issue with it? Because how many practices I talk to where I say, hey, you're booking 3 weeks out. Did you know that was your first appointment? No, I didn't know that. Let me look into
Right.
that. You should know that every single day. And then, if you have someone who's monitoring the number of, or your phone answer rate and monitoring your conversions, that's helpful. The after hours question goes, that's, you got to look at how many calls you get after hours, which your phone data should tell you that. And so, there's some AI bots, there's people. It really comes down to what you think the return on that would be. I don't think I'd have a human at this point. Most places answer after hours unless I'm in certain areas. I would just either let it go to voicemail or use like an AI system.
Awesome. Well, this has been super helpful for me, Ryan, and I know it will be for our listeners and my coaching clients. Anything top of mind that I unintentionally glazed over that you think is relevant?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is when going back to how do you answer, what do you ask your marketing company? How do you know if it's working? Is you just have to look at the data regularly, know that there is no, and I'll go back to my days working for Disney. Even Disney didn't have this. There's no way typically to be able to allocate every ROI or all the ROI you have in marketing. So don't get so granular because you're a dentist. Mostly, it's dental offices here. We're not talking multi-billion-dollar companies. So you got to take it down a notch and look at the highest level KPI, use that and be consistent. So if you're consistently looking at the number of inbound calls, you're consistently looking at your answer rate, your number of conversions online, and the number of new patients, you're going to start to see a trend that you're going to find out in your own area. And then you can look at one of those and say, hey, this one's off. Let me talk to my marketing company and see what they have to say about it. And then see how they come back to the questions regarding, because a lot of marketing companies won't touch, they're going to say, well, we got you the leads. Well, but there's times they can be getting you poor leads. They can be getting you a lot of Medicaid calls. They can be getting you a lot of people that just don't convert. And so, you want to be able to monitor that because it's not always the practice's fault for not converting.
Right. Awesome. Ryan, do you feel comfortable sharing any contact information in case anyone listening has follow-up questions or wants to learn a little bit more about what you guys do?
Yeah, definitely always. You can go to mycmoshare.com. That's MY and then CMO, like Chief Marketing Officer, share.com, mycmoshare.com. Or you can, and there's a place you can fill out and we'll give you some advice. You can email me directly at ryan@mycmoshare.com. Always happy to give advice if I can. And so, and I know everyone that you work with and I've shared some KPIs, feel free to send those out to anybody. I think they're a great starting point for every conversation when it comes to marketing.
Yeah. Well, again, literally 2 days ago, I think it was, I reached out to Ryan and said, Ryan, man, we're getting so many marketing questions. Let's get on a call. And he's very responsive and he lives and loves this stuff just like I do. So I just want to just share with you how much I appreciate you making time for this. It's going to really benefit a lot of people and just help give some clarity to people that are just kind of lost in the murkiness of marketing. So thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you. Always appreciate you sharing your time with me as well. Thanks, Jason.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ryan Gross.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.